Hi there and welcome to the CyberHut TV Vendor Introduction Series. My name is Simon Moffat. I'm founder and research analyst at the CyberHut. And in these Vendor Introduction Series, I get to sit down with super smart leaders and founders from a whole host of different cyber and identity security vendors to understand a little bit more about how they are solving some of today's most important challenges. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have Amit from Reva.ai join me. Amit, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you, Simon?
Excellent. Thank you very much. I always get the easy job. I just ask the questions. I guess you're doing the hard work of building startups and sort of changing the world of identity security. So I always feel I have the privileged easy job. And for those people who've not seen one of these episodes before, I essentially follow the same format and ask our esteemed guest three very important questions to understand a little bit more about the backstory and the mission of what Amit and the team are looking to achieve. And I always start off with the same question, which is essentially, what is the problem which Reva and the guys there are trying to solve?
Yeah, thank you for having us today, Simon. Absolutely right. From a Reva perspective, I think the biggest thing here is that over the past decade or so, if you look at the OWASP top 10 risks within an enterprise, broken access control has always been the number one risk within an organization. And for that, over the decade, there have been many attempts to solve the problem in terms of how can we standardize, how can we structure, and how can we manage that access control within different applications, platforms, infrastructure, workloads, and yet those attempts have never been successful. That has led to a lack of widely adopted solutions and technologies in the market. So that's the big problem that we are trying to solve here. And if you really look under the covers, the biggest problem has been the friction that it takes to actually insert an authorization as a service within an existing framework, within an existing environment. Within monolith applications, if we are trying to extract the authorization code from those applications and try to structure it as an external service, it has been not only a difficult task, but there is not much of an ROI that exists there within the enterprise, right? Similarly, the tools that have been made available when I am trying to deploy authorization as a service, they have been very, I would say, developer centric tools in the market. They are not as business friendly. The business cannot work very closely with the developer to understand the authorization that is being built out within the application. Is it based on the business and the compliance rules that they have previously given as requirements? They don't have the ability to test. And then more importantly, the management and administration of that authorization has been cumbersome, right? Every time there have been new compliance requirements changed, or business policies have changed, and that needs you to go back and revisit that whole authorization logic. So I think when it comes to deploying or adopting that standard authorization as a service, that has always been a challenge that has led to the lack of those mass adoption tools in this space.
That's fabulous. I've always been quite a big proponent of sort of access control and authorization. I think we spend a lot of time handling the authentication aspect, and MFA and strong authentication. It's a really important thing, but really, security doesn't stop there, does it? It's what happens next. What can the individual or the service or workload, what can they actually do then within those downstream systems? And I think you're absolutely right. Those problems have, I guess, they've always been there, but they've always been maybe hard coded or developed within the sort of landscape itself. And I think there's definitely a huge benefit, I think, to externalizing that as a SaaS or just separating it away from the applications themselves. I guess things like data security, AI, those things are really, they need access control as well, don't they? So I guess why is this becoming more of a problem today? Is it the fact we just have more systems to protect and handle the access control for? Is it legacy technologies that just can't deal with sort of authorization as a service? Is it the AI thing? Why is this suddenly becoming more of a problem now, do you think?
Yeah, I think there are, from my perspective, there are two biggest drivers in terms of why this is the need of the hour. The first one is, I think there has been this growing requirement around hyper automation. Organizations have been investing a lot over the past 10 to 15 years in terms of adopting cloud. And if you really look at it as part of the hyper automation principles, people are trying to introduce technologies like RPA, and that hyper automation needs platform engineering, right? Platform engineering is bringing in the standardization, the scalability that you are looking for that hyper automation to be supportable within an enterprise, as well as simplifying and managing the complexity. And one of the big factors for that hyper automation and platform engineering is today what we are seeing in the market is around everything as code, which goes beyond what we call as infrastructure as code, configuration as code, things like testing or compliance requirements, or your whole pipeline now exists as code. And within all of these code, what you have are policies, right? Policies are what is defining the guardrails in terms of how that code needs to exist, how that code needs to be both human as well as machine readable, and they are helping you manage the guardrails around how that hyper automation needs to perform and operate in an environment. So that has been one big driver that we are seeing making the push for more standardization and more use of authorization as a service. The second one, like you absolutely pointed out, AI, right? As organizations are trying to adopt AI in a very a meaningful manner, what we are realizing is that the traditional identity that we call as a perimeter is no longer valid, right? If you look at in a traditional identity perimeter, you have humans who are accessing different applications, different platforms. They are very, I would say, predictable in nature, and they have what we call as a linear access path to different applications and data, versus on the AI, it's all about it is trying to determine based on the intent that has been programmed into it, what is the best access path of getting the insights, the data, and the output that the AI is supposed to generate within an environment. So what that means is what used to be in a traditional identity perimeter, a static sort of a authorization or an access control, where you used to rely on ABAC, RBAC kind of policies. Now that has been changed, right? The policies, the authorization logic needs to be fluid in nature. It needs to understand what is being targeted, or what is the original intent, and then determine at runtime should that AI agent be allowed to access that, right? Should that AI agent be allowed to perform that particular activity? The other aspect that we are seeing within that agentic AI framework is for agents to be really effective, they pretty much need very broad access within an enterprise, right? For them to be autonomous, the agent needs to have different types of access, and that's where IAM, traditional IAM, has challenges, right, in terms of controlling not only the agent's access, but also more importantly identifying what type of data is the agent trying to access, or what type of data is the agent trying to send, and where, right? And who is going to be the recipient of that? So that's where we are seeing that the drive for everything as code, the standardization that is needed, and the prolific use of agentic AI within an enterprise are challenging the status quo in terms of now we need a little bit of a radical approach in terms of how that authorization as a service needs to be dealt with and adopted in an organization.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like a perfect storm, isn't it? You mentioned sort of OWASP, the OWASP top 10 there, right at the beginning. And it's like, there are very technical issues within OWASP. And a lot of them, they are very difficult to often first identify and then fix. So things like broken authorization or broken access control, it's like it will appear on penetration testing reports and audit reports, but it's very hard to get a consistent fix in place. But then you obviously then mentioned a lot of the sort of transformative things or business issues that we're seeing around your speed, automation, everything is code or policy is code, and all of those, I guess it's almost like industry maturity things have happened as well. And it's like authorizations now catching up. It's like all those problems that we had sort of 15 years ago, we can now solve them, can't we? We can now apply sort of automation, repeatability. And I think, it's interesting you mentioned things like access paths there and the sort of dynamic nature of authorization, because it doesn't stand still, does it? Sort of 20 years ago, we had RBAC, and that was the cool thing to do. You build a big business role model and application roles, and then you sort of walk away and hope it works. That isn't the case, is it? Access control is very dynamic, and clearly the whole AI thing it's accelerating the need for like just-in-time access, runtime enforcement, contextual access. You mentioned things like ABAC and attribute-based access control, and REBAC, relationship-based. So there's new weapons, if you like, which we can try and fix some of these problems. And I think that sort of segues nicely into the final question, really, which is, you clearly done some really deep thinking about this space. And I know you sort of history from some other sort of identity vendors in there as well. So you've got the broad experience, but I guess how are you then building Reva to solve this? What's your sort of secret sauce, if you like, and how are you guys best placed to fix some of these problems?
Yeah, Simon. So, we have been thinking long and hard in terms of what's next within the identity security journey. And that's where we landed on, starting Reva with the intent and purpose, like you rightly mentioned. I think the business, the enterprise, the market is ready for authorization as a service. The big transformational waves around everything as code and AI adoption are driving that authorization as a service requirement. And when we were looking to start Reva, the first and important thing that we did was to ensure that the platform is an AI native platform right from the get go. What that means is, we are pretty much using AI across the entire platform to, first of all, understand the current access paths that are existing within an enterprise. So what that means is we are able to discover policies and the what we call as a PBAC, right, policy based access control model that have been applied to humans within an enterprise. How is that structured? How is that formed? What are the compliance and the business guardrails that are defining those policies from a human access perspective? Then we have been able to use the same AI engine to also identify or discover, what are the agents that are being deployed within an organization, what are their relationships to human and non-human identities within an enterprise, what are the different permissions that they are supposed to have or they have been provisioned within an enterprise, and then map all of that into an access path. And the more access paths that we have, the more context we are generating in terms of what is good versus what is bad within an enterprise. And that's essentially one of the big aspects that we have done, is to ensure that the AI native access path then helps us determine, it's sort of the brains behind the scenes in terms of what that good looks like. And then how do we now enable that to be consumed as a service, right? The other aspect that we have in built into the platform is all around what I call as 5Ws and 1H. So 5W 1H is basically a very famous investigative method. It's also called as a Kipling method, in terms of what is great, what is the goal that we are trying to solve here, right? The why is all about what is the purpose, what is the intent behind something when something happens within an organization. When is what establishes the timeline, the duration, how long should that access or activity happen. uh, who are the stakeholders that are either involved in the whole access path or who are going to be impacted because of that access path. Where helps us define the context, the location, the device, the network, the endpoint that you are coming in from. And then the last one is all about how, right? Which says that what should be the standard or the approved or authorized process in terms of how that access needs to be granted, or how that method needs to be accessed, or what type of resources need to be accessed. So that what we have done is the 5W1H principle has been brought within that AI native platform to help us determine at runtime whether an agent or a human or a non-human identity should have access. How long should that access be granted? Like you said, just in time access is part of that. And then more importantly, we are generating our own decision logs once that access is granted, in terms of how the permissions were used, what kind of data was accessed. Then we can then identify, is there a behavioral anomaly behind that access pattern that we are seeing here, and then being able to adjust the authorization decision in runtime, where if there is something malicious happening, or if a guardrail is being breached, then we are able to go ahead and stop that activity, or we are able to introduce a human in the loop, where we have an extra pair of eyes to review the access that is being requested, or the activity that is happening. um, right, so those are some of the things that we have brought within the platform to ensure that we can deliver this as a service, right? The other aspect that we have ensured that we built within the platform is open standards. If you look at some of the traditional products in the market, they use a lot of proprietary authorization policies, which in turn means vendor lock-in, and that has been one of the detriments for a wide-scale adoption in the market. And like you also mentioned, the framework, the market has evolved, the market has matured, where there are now widely adopted standards like OPA, CEDAR. We have ODZEN that was recently announced a couple of weeks back, OpenTDF from a data security
Yeah.
perspective. So how do we ensure that when we are building out the technology, it is built on open standards, so that way we have a very wide set of systems that we can integrate with, all the policies, the authorization context, and the claims, and the assertions all are carried along with the identity, whether it's a human, non-human, or an agentic AI identity. And then we're able to validate that claim, right? Evaluate that claim in real time and adjust the claim decisions based on how that agent is trying to operate, or that human is trying to operate. And that has allowed us to now be able to deliver this as a service that is available 4 nines, has P95 of less than I would say 10 milliseconds within an enterprise, where we can really deliver this as a service, sustain it, and then ensure that we are able to bring in business, bring in the compliance teams, and ensure that they are in charge of defining those guardrails, those policies. They are in charge of testing those policies, and then more importantly, reviewing the decisions that have taken, and ensure that those decisions are appropriate. They are all designed to not only meet the compliance requirement, but also solve some of the risks that an enterprise typically deals with, like whether it's data exfiltration or anomalous behavior. So that's the premise in terms of how we went about with Reva.
There's a lot. There's a lot of reasons why you're best placed there. It sounds like again, it's you've been really thorough, I guess, in sort of thinking about the problem, and clearly authorization and access control. It's a long-standing issue. Right away from protecting those single on-premise web applications, back in the day, 20 years ago, to now where we have a whole magnitude of humans, non-humans. Clearly, you mentioned agentic in there as well. And I think the problem statement's got bigger. We know that there are more things to protect, different nuances of authorization, and then you mentioned things like standards as well. Different ways of both, I guess, writing policy and enforcing the policy on those downstream systems. So I think you've done a lot of thinking there, which I think is fabulous. And I'm really hoping that authorization does start to become. We start to solve some of these issues that we have had for such a long time, and we've definitely been talking about it. There's been some things happen over the past sort of decade or so to allow that to happen. So it sounds like you guys have certainly been immersed in this space and really developing, mentioned things like SaaS and being able to support a multitude of different standards, context, humans, non-humans, and having that sort of global platform there. So Amit, thank you for taking a little bit of time out from Reva and building the world of sort of authorization as a service. I think it's a fascinating area, and I think it's definitely an area which needs more attention than perhaps it has had over the past sort of 5 or 10 years. So thank you for taking a little bit of time out. Thank you for those watching. This has been another episode in our vendor introduction series brought to you by the Cyberhood. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.